So Commissioners Willie and Fye, are you ready to get going? On camera? Good morning, everyone. Okay, well, good morning. It is now 8:30 on Tuesday, February 15th, 2022. This is Chair Catherine Harrington. And here today at our Board of Commissioners work session is Commissioner Pam Treese, Commissioner Willie, and myself. Commissioner Rogers has informed our board clerk that he will not be working at Washington County today. So our first item on the agenda is board and leadership communication. Who would like to go first? Oh, good morning, Commissioner Fye.
Good morning, Chair Harrington. And since I'm muted, I can go first. Did you say something?
Go right ahead.
Oh, okay. Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Good to see you, Diane. Welcome back. A lot happening, I think, moving forward with around transportation. Yesterday was WCC meeting, and then this week or Thursday we're having JPAC meeting, and then I'm also gonna be testifying at OTC around IIJA, which is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which is a significant money that's coming to Oregon to improve our infrastructure systems current, and then to make sure our infrastructure system is ready for new and future demands. And that is a lot of money, 1.2 billion, excuse me, not the M, but the B, billion, coming to Oregon. So very exciting times to be part of transportation. And that was a big conversation yesterday at WCCC. And then the other conversation, big conversation that our staff is coming to talk to us around today is tolling. And I think this conversation, it seems to be getting complicated, and I think a lot of people are adding for our constituent, but the simplest way of explaining tolling and what's happening with tolling is certain people are against tolling because it's paying something that they haven't been paid. It's the simplest way. And others, are concerned, are we tolling for the sake of for freeway expansions? And I think people have opinions about that. And then, or are we tolling for congestion pricing? That way we create funding mechanisms that will invest in multimodal. And then the other, thing that's happening around tolling is, it would have been one thing if we're tolling all the three freeways, I-84, 205, and 84. But that's not what's happening. ODOT is tolling a small section of 205, which impacts a certain community that isn't prepared. And my staff and I, when we toured Clackamas County, we saw that, and that community is expressing, that they're not ready, or they don't have the infrastructure or the capabilities to meet all the traffic that are going to be diverted to them. And we saw, and I agree with Paul Salvas on that one. And then the other thing around diversion conversation-wise happening is ODOT isn't really presenting a game plan or a long-term plan of mitigating diversion for the communities that are going to be impacted this section of 205 that are going to be tolled. And then the other part of around tolling that people will hear, and its simplest way of explaining is this idea of bonding now. And I think a lot of people have different opinions about bonding now, because if we bond now, then it's going to keep us stuck in a funding mechanism that will, that people are concerned about being stuck at, because that funding mechanism then will only fund freeways. So people have concerns, but I'm really excited that our subject matter experts are coming to speak with us in this. And I think it will be really good as a board to sort of I don't know, a thumbs up or just to express where we are on this journey of tolling. Are we for or against, individually or as a board? And there was going to be a vote actually this Thursday, but that has been delayed by the request of Clackamas County. And so there's no vote this Thursday. We have another opportunity. Next month, we'll have to vote at JPAC to move forward with tolling or not. So I'll end right there. A lot of conversations around, but Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, a lot of money. And then the tolling is moving along, but people are now coming out to express their concerns around diversion, the funding mechanisms, and then the botting idea. I'll end right there and turn it to the next person.
Commissioner Willie or Commissioner Treese?
I'll jump in there. Thank you, Nafisa, for that update, and I look forward to this conversation as well later today in work session. Or in the board meeting, whichever one it is. I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, I look forward to that conversation as well. I have some concerns, and there's some things I just don't understand about this. So we'll have that conversation then. So Commissioner Treese and I had a joint meeting with TVC, Tualatin Valley Creates, and RAC, which of course the Regional Arts Commission. And it's always good for me to get an update from those organizations and hear what they've been doing and what they'd like to be doing, and just I guess keep up with the arts community. So that was a good meeting. COLPAC executive meeting met last Friday to give a review to Ariana, our executive director, and discuss a little bit more of an organizational financial snapshot looking out into the future. And so she will be working on that as well. And then Ariane and I met as well later the next day to talk about broadband, where we are with the rural broadband project, some of the complications that we're encountering, and how we're going to move ahead, meeting with, of course, talking with Representative Marsh, who has a broadband bill that will move forward with amendments. I look forward to see what that looks like. But yeah, so we continue to move ahead with our rural broadband project. And then this week I have GPI board meeting tomorrow morning and Forest Trust lands on Friday. That's all I got.
Good morning, everybody. One of the things that I was going to report on is this the briefing from TVC and RAC. So thanks, Jerry, for doing that. I did meet with Mike Morey from the Standard after a meeting that Mayor Beatty called for looking at childcare types of alternatives. What I had signed up to do was to work toward getting the private side together with the public side under the auspices of Westside Economic Alliance. I've talked with them about convening this group just to talk about what's happening in the world of childcare in relationship to the public sector and to the private sector. So I've been doing some pre-meetings with Intel, with the Standard, with others, just to see if they'll come to the table, so to speak, and talk about these things. And I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. So far, everybody's been interested in doing that. I also attended the Central Cultural Board meeting. Let's see, and the PAB meeting was last Thursday night, and we did vote to endorse the 2022 proposed CDBG and home funding lists. So I think there's some really good projects there, and it's nice to be able to vote to put those things into reality. So that's what I've got. I've got a community action thank-a-thon tonight, or excuse me, that's tomorrow, and then the CA board meeting, the community action board meeting. And then at the end of the week, we have a Washco Preschool for All task force meeting. That's my schedule.
Wonderful. I attended the Clean Water Advisory Committee last Wednesday, which was a lot of fun to continue on the path of learning about the water reuse strategy that our utility in the form of Clean Water Services is pursuing. Really well thought out, moving forward on the base that was established back in the 90s, and for which our county has benefited all these decades. But now we know that we need to extend our water reuse strategy. So it's pretty interesting and exciting stuff. And CWAC always does a terrific job of looking at policy and investment proposals for us and giving us really good advice. Beyond that, a few of us in the upper ranks were involved with a few hours of interviewing for a new staff assistant. And so onward, ho we go. Ms. Angie, I'll be asking a question in the financial update about an item that continues to be circulated here in our local community. But I'll ask as part of our next subject.
I do want to, thank you. I do want to add that I have in front of me the Joint County Voters Pamphlet Statement for the ESPD that I'm signing, so in support. So I thought I would just remind everybody that that needs to be done. They're just starting to come out, so the work's happening in the background.
Will someone associated with the campaign be getting that to each of us?
Oh, absolutely. I just got it first. So I have connections. So anyway, the point is that I just wanted to make sure that all of you knew that this is underway. And if they're asking for donations as well. So I'm just encouraging all of you. I recognize that it's this is a campaign platform here that I'm speaking from. So thank you.
Any other commissioner communications? All right, over to leadership communications. Ms. Angie.
Good morning, Chair Harrington, Board of Commissioners, Clerk Moss, if you can promote Rachel Fuller and Laurel Brown. And while they're being promoted, our COVID workforce update, our numbers continue to go down, which is a wonderful sight. And fact, we do have 6 new cases in the workforce this week, which is lower than the 20 cases last week. So this is a positive trend. So really happy for our employees and their families. We are continuing to look at our workload and timeline of key projects and milestones. We are pushing out the go live date, which was for Q2 of 2022 to our website to early or mid-September for the website. The redesign of a website impacts every single department. And so this gives a little breathing room across the Washington County organization while still ensuring that we have a quality website for our community when launched in September. And with that, I will turn it over to Rachel. Oh, Chair.
Thank you for that update. Will we be getting continued trickle through of program changes, or do you have some target date by which we'll have some certainty as to what is actually going to move forward to schedule and what is going to be pushed out?
This was a cross-cutting item. We will be collecting more of a holistic look as we move forward. Each of the assistants are currently working with their departments to determine what can get slowed down and what needs to pause for a longer period of time. Good question.
Great. Good morning, Chair Harrington and Commissioners. I'm very pleased to introduce Laurel Brown, who's been appointed as Washington County's Facilities and Parks Manager. Ms. Brown has more than 20 years of experience in administrative operations, facility maintenance, and property management, including responsibilities managing multiple teams, budgeting, capital planning, contracting, leasing, and asset management. Previously, she served as Assistant Director of Facilities Operations for Reed College and also in various leadership roles in facilities and property management at Portland State University. Laurel holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from Drury College in Springfield, Missouri, and pursued graduate studies at Louisiana State University. Again, we're very pleased to welcome Ms. Brown to Washington County.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. This is day 2, and it's been a very warm welcome from Washington County. So I appreciate that and look forward to working with all of you.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you. And it is wonderful to be able to put faces with names. So thank you for bringing forward the new management team that is charting a 21st century future forward for Washington County. Really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. And Laurel will be taking up the lead of a really key initiative for Washington County, which is our facilities master planning process. So thank you for your leadership in advance, Laurel. And that concludes my weekly update.
Mr. Anderson, legal.
Good morning, Chair, Commissioners. Just a reminder, Tom's still out. We'll be back next Tuesday for your board meeting. And also a reminder, Monday is a day off, if you ever take a day off.
President's Day, folks. It's a national holiday.
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't think I have anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Ms. Taniguchi Dennis, Clean Water Services CEO.
Thank you, Chair Harrington, and good morning, Board of Clean Water Services. I still have that frog in my throat, but it's good to be back. We've been celebrating the dry and sunny weather as people, and there's a lot of folks visiting and enjoying Fern Hill right now. But for the aquatic environment, it's an interesting situation. The river flows are much lower than normal in the upper river. We've had no meaningful rain in nearly a month, and this results in about 25% of the typical February flow in the river. We're already looking at the shift in our treatment operations for Forest Grove and Hillsborough earlier than normal into the spring, but Clean Water Services is continuing to watch and monitor the river flows. This week, we've had 5 new exposures to COVID and 10 positive cases. So we're still at an elevated level that we're managing within the team. They're continuing to maintain business continuity, and many of the employees are still able to work offsite on telework as they manage their symptoms and their road to wellness. So a lot going on at Clean Water Services, and thank you for the comments about water reuse. That is a significant strategy for the river and for the district and for the region. And CWAC is just a delightful group and very thoughtful. So thank you.
Anything else, commissioners or leadership? No, all righty. I just want to make sure everyone knows that we've had a couple of changes to our agenda since the original posting. Item E1 was pulled. Item E4 moved from consent to public hearing. And I would like to pull item C7 from the consent agenda to make some comments. Any other questions on the formal agenda? All righty, seeing none, then we'll move right over to our next topic, financial outlook update from Ms. Angie and Mr. Rhodes.
Good morning again, Chair Harrington and board. And I want to reintroduce to the board Rodney Rhodes, who's our interim chief financial officer. This is Rodney's first presentation to your board. Next slide, please. And today, what we're going to cover is our budget challenges, fiscal year 2021, 2022 mid-year update, a general fund forecast, our 2022 to 2023 budget site schedule, which includes committee meetings, public hearings, budget adoption, and then the budget equity tool update. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Rodney.
Thank you, Ms. Angie. I appreciate it. Good morning, Board of Commissioners. Before we get started today, I just wanted to take a minute to see if there are any specific questions that you might have before we jump in, and then run through the presentation and provide the mid-year update.
Well, I know I have one. Ms. Angie has shared with me some detailed information that I don't know that the board has been informed about, but I'm hearing a continuous lack of information be circulated amongst elected officials around the WCCC table. And it is specifically around the Major Streets Transportation Improvement Program and the funding level for that, and this idea of bonding future revenues for a particular project set before that project set is set. According, if I remember correctly, what Ms. Angie shared with me, in the county's budget right now, we're sitting on over $100 million, maybe upwards of 150 million. And I know from my prior experience that bond counsel, so the legal beagles that make sure you adhere to bonding authority, won't let you bond something unless you can spend out over a 3 to 5 year period. Nonetheless, we haven't heard that from our finance and legal experts here as a full board, yet that storyline continues to be circulated amongst our mayors as though it's just a small matter of putting pressure on the Board of Commissioners to move forward. So I would like you to either give us that information today or give us a date certain within the next 30 days of when we're going to get it, because time is a wasting. We've been hearing Commissioner Rogers tell this story for 2 months now, and we need to get on with settling the information.
Yeah, and there have been some discussions internally with staff around, and we'll talk a little bit about this when we get into the presentation, but there have been some discussions around some of the financial challenges, as I'll call it, especially as it relates to the general fund, and what options may be available to us to help mitigate some of those challenges. As I've put it to internal staff, as we've talked through this, what budget levers we have that might be available to us as we go forward. So this is one of those discussions that have taken place. There's been no resolution or decisions made at this point regarding that, but it is a discussion topic that we have had. There is about $100 million that is sitting out there. But in conversation with Mr. Roberts, it appears that some of those contracts will be let in the very near future, which will pull down some of those balances. But what we are attempting to look at internally right now as we're building the budget is a long-term look at our projects, how we would fund those projects.
So Rodney, can I jump in here specifically to MISTEP?
Sure.
We will schedule time in the next 30 to 45 days. I don't have a date certain at this time to come back to the board with a further discussion on MISTIP. As Mr. Rhodes was indicating, yes, we do have that fund balance, and there are projects which the board has already adopted that are in that pipeline that are part of that $100 million. We do not have a definitive, nor is the analysis complete if bonding is a viable option. And so that discussion would come back to the board for further input and direction from your board.
So right now, it is not a viable option until we have data that tells us differently.
Correct. We are working internally and with bond counsel as well.
So I think that is a clear message that has failed to be articulated thus far. Hence the problem.
Okay, thank you for that. And we'll connect with staff internally and make sure that's clear.
All right, can we go to the next slide, please? So a couple of the challenges that we face both for 22 and for fiscal 23. As you know, we use CPIU West Coast average for calculation of our COLA, our annual COLA increases. Right now, we're running about 5.1%. This is one of the highest CPI percentages that I have seen in years. And so this is creating some challenges. We're still talking about how we go about proposing a COLA for our employees and still be able to provide the services that we have without tightening up on some of our general fund resources. I believe there has been conversation in the past around expenditure growth outpacing revenues. This is the case not only for FY23, but also as we look toward the next 5 years to see the expenditure growth outpacing our revenue. So we have some significant challenges, especially in the general fund, as it relates to expenditure growth. ARPA funds have helped offset some of those expenditures, but it's not a long-term fix for us, as we know. So what we have talked about internally is we need to start planning now to provide the board with a long-term impact of what expanded services through ARPA means, the potential for a reduction in those service levels, and prioritize with the board where those changes may occur in the out years. Next slide, please. Just a quick mid-year update, and I want to preface before we get started into this. This is as of December. I anticipate that the numbers will continue to change, but right now things are looking fairly good. We're up about 2.4% on our revenues. And then on the expenditure side, we're meeting our targets of 94% for the most part. Our personnel services are running a little bit higher as a result of the pay equity impacts, but overall expenditures are running fairly well. Again, this is a snapshot as of December. I anticipate that these numbers will change and will adjust as we go and report back as the year goes on. Next slide, please. As you know, Oregon law allows for budget adjustments and supplementals to appropriate additional funding if need be, and transfer resources between funds. And this is the time of year that we begin that process. And so wanted to highlight that will be a part of this budget process. Next slide, please. I'm sure you've all seen this before. This is just a general fund forecast. This is what we use to model out not only for the next fiscal year, but also for the next 5 years, and you'll see some comparatives using these assumptions. I did want to highlight the middle section there where the cost of living or the COLA calculations are there. We did calculate a 1.8% increase for fiscal 22. And you'll note that we are still evaluating fiscal 23 with a recommendation to come at a later date. Next slide. This is the fund balance for the general fund. This will give you an idea not only for fiscal 22, but in the out years of what it looked like from a forecast perspective for the adopted budget. Just a reminder, the minimum fund balance is 15% with a cap of 20%. Next slide. As you can see, when we start to plug in the assumptions and we look forward, as I mentioned, expenditures are continuing to outpace revenues, and consequently our fund balances are beginning to fall off in the out years, so to speak. We dip below that 15% line beginning in 27 and fiscal 28. Next slide. This is a highlight of the budget schedule going forward. I believe this, if it's not already on your calendars, it will be very, very shortly. But just to run through, we will begin in April a budget committee orientation, the evening of April the 6th. And then the week of May 16th, we've broken the committee meetings up into 3 nights to provide enough time to go through all of the various committees. Again, that is the week of the 16th with the May 18th and 19th as well. Next slide.
If we could stop there.
Sure.
So commissioners, this is a format that we've used for all of our prior 3 years. And we have provided feedback, the budget committee and the board, about needing more time. And if I understand it correctly, this, because I haven't heard how it's different, I assume it's the same. So I'm asking the 3 of you, is this the workable model that you want along with the budget committee, or now's the time to speak up if you want something different? Commissioner Treese, go ahead.
If my memory serves me correctly, one of the requests that we made at the end of the process this past year was that the meetings that were so long would be split into 2 meetings. Am I remembering that correctly? Okay, that was one thing. And it was just so much overload to take on at once. Certainly not that we don't want to go through all of it, but I think it would be helpful if we could maybe smooth it out a little bit. So, I think I remember Commissioner Willie saying the same thing. Got a thumbs up there.
We have had some discussions around how we can better manage some of the committee meetings. This is a reflection of trying to kind of break those up, if you will, to provide a little bit more time for committee meetings, for questions and answers, so that it's not all piled on, if you will, over the course of a short period of time. What we have done is proposed a schedule that provides, again, those 3 nights of committee meetings with specific committees in an attempt to try to get you the information that you need, but still yet provide enough time to thoroughly talk through each of those particular committees.
Mr. Rhodes, the chair has her hand up.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt his answering. I was going to follow up with another question when he was done. So
I think as a follow-up to that, what we can do is provide a snapshot of how the meetings looked last year to compare to how we smoothed out the evenings this year, listening to the board's feedback.
Yes, absolutely.
I think one of the things that we learned last year was that the overall general fund needs its own night and doesn't need to have special funds crammed on top of it to be more surgical about it. So I think it would be good to look at different options. Commissioner Willie has something now.
You know, I'm just looking at the calendar for that particular week. And if we were considering smoothing or spreading this out just a little bit, because that week we start on May 16th. Your first budget meeting is on a Monday. We go Tuesday, of course, with our normal work sessions and spend a good part of that day all day Tuesday. Then we move into Wednesday, the 18th, and Thursday, the 19th. That's a hefty week to be kind of processing a lot of numbers and a lot of information. So is there a possibility we could move one of those either into the week prior? I mean, I feel like we're kind of winging this right now. So maybe just for future consideration, maybe we could move one of those meetings into the week prior. And I don't know, like Pam said, reduce those. And I like the chair's comment about general fund having its own night, because there's a lot of meat in that. So anyway, maybe we should brainstorm this. I don't like doing this on the fly, so maybe we could have more conversations about that. Tanya and I don't know what you think about that. I don't want to mess up your schedule on this, but I think we need to have a little bit more thoughts about this.
So to be clear, I'm not trying to have us design it here. Rather, this slide didn't reflect to me that our feedback from prior years had been heard and acted upon. So I wanted to make sure for one last time, I provided the opportunity for the board to give feedback. And Ms. Angie and her staff will have to come back with further information for us.
Absolutely. And this is great feedback. And Chair Harrington, just so you know, we did attempt, based on comments made from last year, we did attempt to kind of split this out a little bit. We originally had one of the committee meetings in another week, but in the interest of providing time to digest all of the information before we actually go to the public hearing process, we wanted to try to propose a calendar that would allow for these committee meetings to occur in 1 week and then move over into having another week or two of being able to, again, digest some of this information. So that was the attempt here, but certainly we'll go back and take a look.
Yep. So on any of these dates, we'll take your feedback and continue to refine this in an iterative refinement process so that this meets the board expectations.
Correct. Thank you. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we did want to provide a 2 week or so window there for the opportunity to review, reflect, ask questions, and then come back for the public hearing process and the approval of the requested budget on June the 2nd. And so we were hoping that schedule would allow for that. But again, we'll take a closer look at that in a deeper dive. And then finally, the budget adoption process on June 21st. Yes, ma'am.
So, Mr. Rhodes, I know that you and the team really operate under some very tight constraints for the budget. For example, and hopefully I'm reflecting this correctly, so I'm really relying upon you to help us all, and that includes our public, who isn't as familiar with these constraints as certainly staff is, but also I think the board is too. It generally takes a week from when our budget is adopted to our team being able to have all the information finalized to submit to the state per state requirements, right? So we pretty much have a hard set date of June 21st. Then for the public hearing, is there like a 3-week requirement, or could we narrow that down to 2 weeks even?
Are you referring to between that June 2nd and June 21st date?
Yes.
So we originally were looking at a June 14th adoption, but because we're not having a meeting that on the 14th, we had.
But we could.
If it's your choice to do that, absolutely we could. So
we definitely could, and that would buy us more time.
Yeah.
To have the actual budget committee meetings that we need.
We could certainly look at that. Absolutely.
I think we should just do it and not feel like we are constrained by some model that's been in place from prior decades. We have the power to do this. So I'll just make that request.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question, Chair.
I'm sorry, I can't see.
Go ahead, Commissioner Fye.
You guys can hear me, right? So it's,
yes.
I'm just reflecting. I'm glad, Chair Harrington, you alerted us to the other, because I was thinking that the years were incorrect, that we were looking at what we did prior years, that going forward. So I think the other part in making the changes to the previous slides, the other thing we talked about, Mr. Rodney, was around the public hearing one not being enough to people. And then until 10 p.m. also was also really hard, not only for the staff, the board, but also our constituents. It's a very, very late into the night. I'm glad there's online version of participating in this now. But I think the interest was to provide more public hearing, to space it out as well. I was interested in not one shot, but giving the community more opportunities to come and testify for changes. So I don't, not to complicate your work further, Mr. Rodney, but is there an opportunity to create more public hearings than one night only until 5 to, what can we do to facilitate that open trend, accessible government
right
to our community?
Yeah, and let me do this for you. Let me go back and take a look at the schedule and work with Miss Angie to maybe revise some of these proposed dates, and see if we can accommodate what we're hearing today. I think that I definitely think we can do that. We just need to put our heads together and try to figure out how we would make that work.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Okay, next slide, please. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the budget equity tool process, where we are and what is going on. We began this process for the FY23 budget. The discussion with Latricia's group and other staff members is really an approach where we're using the FY23 budget as our baseline year. And that baseline year allows us to gather the data, allows us to analyze our data and report back out. And the goal would be to begin a process that we build on over a multi-year approach for FY20, starting in FY23 and then building beyond that. And so right now, what we have done as far as staff involvement, we are gathering information, we're putting together a lot of the baseline information that will then be reported out in a narrative format with the budget equity tool initiative section of the budget document. But in addition to that, providing an additional standalone equity document that gives a little bit more what I call meat to what we're trying to accomplish, and provide some more statistical data that we then will build on as we go forward. So I just wanted to provide you with a quick update on where we are, what the goals would be, and how we're going to produce the budget equity tool information as we go forward. Next slide, please.
Rodney.
Yeah.
Perfect timing. I forgot that was our last slide.
I apologize. I can't see hands during this. So if please.
That's what I'm here for, to help you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
please, yes. Question.
Yep, so could we go back one slide?
Yes.
So this is a exciting year, right? Because this is where while we've been putting equity into practice diligently across the agency, but it varies from department to department. As I understand it from Ms. Angie and Ms. Tillman, this is the first year where we're conscientiously making an effort in our budget to apply equity across the board. So right off the bat, that means we're doing a good job because it's the first time, right? So team, carry that confidence forward, okay? But I do have a question about not how we're going about it, but how we're helping all of us to go through this together. So for example, and we've just been tossing around ideas from meeting to meeting, board meeting to board meeting, particularly with Ms. Tillman's equity and community engagement team. Things like, well, gee, this will be the first time we've had an equity tool. So in addition to our having somewhat of a budget committee and community training on what our budget is all about, how do we also make room, time, or a forum for our community to have the opportunity to better understand how we're going about it so that they have expectations that are in line with our own roadmap, right? And then so that's what we're trying to explore. And I don't know what that looks like yet. And then also we chose to use, instead of having a budget listening session or community investment conversation for this fiscal year, we chose to use a Board of Commissioners town hall and have also consciously chosen to take the Q1 Board of Commissioners town hall and use that as a way to reflect back not only what we heard, but to help our community better understand from Ms. Angie, the constraints, the landscape that is shaping this next budget year in ways that community members can identify with, right? Not our own government budget speak that we all get into. But we also talked about with that to start that process of helping the community understand how it is we're going about applying equity. So I'm wondering, I have read what your slide says, and I've heard the approach of, a standalone document and baseline year. But I'm still left wondering, how does it lay out in terms of, okay, we have a baseline year, but what should we expect year over year then about how we're being conscientious about the implementation of equity in that budget, just at a picture level. I mean, I say picture level because we can't say with certainty, it's going to be X, Y, or Z. So I'm just left wondering, and we don't have to have the answers today, but how are we going to go about making sure that the board's expectations are reasonable relative to what Ms. Angie and you are directing for the agency and giving us with a proposed budget, as well as for our community? Otherwise, we could just have a mess on our hands again.
Right. I will tell you that this process that we're going through, I think is a fantastic process, and Latricia's group is doing a great job of taking, I believe, what I interpret to be the direction of the board and moving us in that long-term strategy, in that long-term direction. The thing that I have come to recognize as we've talked about this is that the county has been doing a lot of equity things. We've just never highlighted them in this way. And so by taking this baseline year for fiscal 23 and building on that, creating this equity document, the standalone document that we can hold up and highlight, as well as including the equity tool initiatives in our budget document, and really showing the financial investments that we have made and have been making, but also be able to highlight some of the successes that have come from that investment. And so, those are the things that I think, at least for me, I think you'll be excited to see, not only as we begin this process in 23, but as we go through the process in subsequent years. And so I think this is a real great approach, but I do want to stress that, from my observations, the county has done a fantastic job of providing equity funding. We've just never highlighted it. We've never put it out there for the world to see, and this is a great initiative to do that.
Well, we've never directed it before either, but it is meaningful to me, Mr. Rhodes, that you do give very high marks to this direction and how things are proceeding, because you are an experienced chief financial officer. And so your confidence, your words of affirmation are very meaningful for me. And I remain hopeful that we will do a good job moving ahead in the future months about communicating that. And I'll just continue to be patient and hope. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Chair, from your questions, comments too, I think what I'm hearing also, you just mentioned it in your last comment, communication. So really, not only Rodney had spoke to the journey we're going on internally in this budget process, we are learning. We are still gathering the data from the departments. And so that same learning journey, sharing that journey with the board, and then also the community, so that we're all on the same journey, so we can pull those pieces together as well.
Okay.
So So I've been pretty proactive with my questions. Board members, do you have any further questions or comments? All right. Terrific.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to see you again, and I know we'll see each other a lot more in the coming months.
Well, a really useful update.
Thank you.
So we're at 9:25 now, and thanks to Clerk Moss, he already cleared with our next speaker, Mr. Rodney Rhodes, that he would be ready to advance the next topic of the North Bethany County Service District for Roads Budget Committee appointments. So welcome, Mr. Rhodes.
Well, thank you. Actually, I wanted to see if Stephen is on, and Clerk Moss, if we could elevate him as well. And while we're doing that, I got to be honest with you. I really being new to the county and the county's processes and all, I really had some head scratching moments as to just exactly what I was supposed to be doing in terms of these committee appointments and all of that. And Miss Angie's laughing because I had sat there going, I don't know what to do. So Stephen has been gracious enough to help me with this, especially with this particular budget committee. And so I really appreciate his help. I appreciate everything that he's done in terms of just the assistance. And so, Stephen, if you don't mind, I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you run with this, because I think you can speak to this a little better than I can.
All right, happy to do that. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Stephen Roberts, Director of Land Use and Transportation. So as Rodney said, yeah, we've worked together to move forward with committee appointments for the North Bethany County Service District for Roads Budget Committee. And so I'll just walk us through these fairly quickly. Next slide, please. All right, we have the budget committee itself consists of the 5 elected commissioners, as well as 5 community members that live or own property in the district. We currently have 2 vacant positions on the board for community members. And the 2 eligible applicants you see on the slide here, Sarah Beachy, she's actually served on the committee, but her term expired. And I think with the transition in the CFO position, just didn't get to a reappointment in time to have a continuous term. But she has reapplied and is very interested in rejoining the committee. And we have a new applicant, Alicia Gruber, who also is a resident in the community. These would both be for terms expiring in June of 2024. Next slide, please. So our recommendation is to move forward with both appointments, Sarah Beachy and Alicia Gruber. And I would just say that Sarah Beachy has served as the committee chair several times and is a valuable addition to the group. So we would look forward to working with her again. Alicia Gruber is a new resident to North Bethany. She actually has a work background working in capital projects, and so she's quite familiar with the kind of work that we would be doing here, and I think will also reflect a good addition to the team. And Chair, I see you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Roberts. As you mentioned, Ms. Beachy has served as the chair a few times. When was she first appointed to this budget committee?
That is a good question, Chair. I would have to go back and try to find that info for you. Unless it's in the packet.
Nope,
Okay.
it's not in the matrix, which is why I'm asking.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'll have to find that information for you, Chair. Okay, I'll see what I can find out and I will get that information to the full board. Any additional questions? Or comments? Okay, so are we okay to?
I am in support of the staff recommendations.
When will this be coming forward from the board or to the board? That's usually another one of the standard items.
Yes, apologies. We do intend to bring this back to the board on March 1st for action.
Great.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks, Stephen.
All righty, so we have a half an hour before our 10 o'clock board meeting, but our remaining work session topics are each longer than that. So we will pause our work session at this juncture. We'll be on a different Zoom link as usual for our board meeting. And then we will reconvene our work session starting at 1 o'clock with the remaining 2 items on our agenda. Anything else, commissioners or leadership staff? All righty, we'll see you a little later then. Thank you.